I am presenting to you a series, and I have shared with you last month on verses 2 up to 4, which invites us to abide in Jesus. And this passage is describing our relationship with God, a loving relationship in abiding in Jesus in order for us to bear fruits of righteousness. It is humbling on our part that we are invited by Jesus. Of all the people in the world, He has a concern for us, and He has a concern for all. So which is why His invitation is for us to maintain that loving relationship in abiding in Jesus in order for us to bear fruits of righteousness. So we cannot bear those fruits being on our own, in our own doing, in our own strength, away from the will of God. So this I have presented in my previous presentation. Today I will study with you on John chapter 15, verses 9 up to 11. Again, these verses build up the concept of relationship with one another. As I read these verses, I am moved to ask this question: what is the hallmark of a Christian? Or rather, I would like to make it simple. What is the identifying mark of a Christian? A Christian that belongs to the church in the last days. Of course, we have Revelation chapter 14, verse 12, which identifies the church in the last days as the commandment-keeping people and have the faith or the faithfulness of Jesus. Those who believe in Jesus, they have the faith and the faithfulness of Jesus. I don't have a problem of commandment keeping, even if more in the world say there are only 2 commandments remaining: love for God and love for our fellow men. Because we know as members of the church, we know that the elements of loving God are bound up in commandments number 1 up to 4. And loving our fellow men, the elements of loving our fellow men are bound in commandments 5 up to 10. So you have all these elements that are actually found here. What is really that identifies me that I am a follower of Jesus? So this is the theme I would like to share with you in this study this evening. Commonly, the world is known for branding. Apple is a brand that we know for its innovation. Toyota is a brand for a car for the masses, a car for the common people. And what more? You have here Honda, which is Accord. That is how the world identifies their product. They put a brand on it. So there are so many ways the church is symbolized in the Bible. Here are some that I would like to share with you. The church is like branded as a rock or identified as a rock. Or the church is identified as a sheep, in God's pasture. The church is also like identified as a harvest. Church in the last days are actually commissioned to do the harvest. An army of soldiers, then angels. So you have the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we have the symbols of the 3 angels' message on those angels flying in the mid-heaven. So that is our identifying, brand as a church. So these elements gave the idea of a church that proclaims a message. So the Christian church is identified, as preaching in this particular type of theme of the 3 angels' message, or proclaiming the message. I am not disagreeing with that. I am using the word hallmark. What is the hallmark of a Christian? Knowing that Christmas is known for celebration of joy to the world. So we are in this season of Christmas. My wife and I have our own simple way of celebrating our joy of being together. And for 40 years now, we celebrated that last Wednesday, December 20, as our wedding anniversary, and we took these pictures, during the celebration, the Christmas program of the elementary. Here on the grounds, we have this beautiful decoration. So we took time taking these pictures, knowing that we also had our moment, in time. December 20, we had our wedding, and then trying to celebrate, and imagine that during that moment, I was so enthused, and I was just so like cloud nine, feeling cloud nine, and I was able to write a poem, in that particular wedding that we have. But I would like, before I go further, I would like to mention here that love between husband and wife is the tenderest, is the fondest, the loveliest illustration of that love relationship God would want us to demonstrate in our relationship with one another. And the relationship between husband and wife is actually the best illustration of that love relationship and the unity, between God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. So when you're in love, you can be poetic. And so here, I wrote this poem 40 years ago, and I would like to share this one with you. And after 39 years, I wrote the second stanza, and after writing the second stanza, I dedicated this during our wedding anniversary, and I posted it on Facebook. Don't go to Facebook. Listen to what I am actually saying right in here now. I dedicated this one to my bride, this poem. If love is much more than painting of moonlight and roses, much more than singing of love songs and singing lullabies, then in Christ we paint it of our own. It may not have a perfect ray, but pliant to the trials of life, lowly yet unwavering. We shared so much that made us closer to each other and made our marriage stronger. And I appreciate all the ways that you made me feel love. You're the best wife a man could ever long for. And I look forward to many wonderful years of deeply in love with you. Happy anniversary. So that's how I dedicated this poem to my wife, and to express to her my love and our love for each other. One thing I discovered here, that when one is in love, as I've mentioned, he or she can be poetic, and it is humbling experience. So let's move on. In this slide, I would like to share with you the epitome of that love. The heart yearns for human love, but this love is not strong enough, or pure enough, or precious enough to supply the place of the love of Jesus. That's so very beautiful. This book that I have proposed to my wife, we will read as I was courting her. And this is a very beautiful book we can read, as we are reminded in our responsibilities of that love relationship to each other. So the heart yearns for human love, but this love is not strong enough, or pure enough, or precious enough to supply the place of the love of Jesus. So of course, that love relationship between husband and wife will continue to harmonize as the years go by, and as you grow older in your love relationship, your love will grow. But it cannot take the place of the love of Jesus. That is beautiful. In this study, I would like to share with you that I am convinced that here in John chapter 15, verses 9 up to 17, remind us that the identifying mark of a Christian is the love of Jesus. If we read verses 9 up to 17, we will be able to grasp that concept of the love of Jesus. The love of Jesus here in these verses is mentioned 9 times. So which is why I have a strong feeling, I have a strong argument that I am convinced that the theme of this chapter is the love of Jesus. Love indeed is the strong and convincing evidence of a Christian life. Love is the hallmark of a Christian. If you keep my commandments, Jesus said, and you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandment and abide in his love, this I have spoken unto you, that your joy may be full. So I have a question. How is love known? John chapter 15 verse 13, Christ said, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. The meaning of this verse is actually simple. It means that love is capable of making sacrifices. It means that love must sacrifice. It is a love that sacrifices here in this verse. In a few hours, Jesus will be led to the cross, and he has the feeling of going to the cross one step at a time. But his disciples did not understand him. He was able to communicate with them in a most tender, in a most friendly communication. Hey, you know, in a few hours from, in fact, the elders coming from Antioch, the elders coming from the places, you know, in Judea, did not want him to go up to Jerusalem because they knew the plan of the religious leaders, the leaders of the temple, in reference to Jesus, because they were thinking Jesus was like a person who will be building up a kingdom, and he became a threat to them, to the extent that when they built up the case against Jesus to Pilate and to the Roman, you know, governors, they were accusing, alleging that Jesus Christ is going to be building a kingdom and he himself is the king. So right here, the question is, Christ was wanting to let his disciples understand about what it would mean to love. And he said, I am willing to make sacrifices, and I'm going to Jerusalem. You know, they have just finished the Lord's communion, and Jesus Christ was saying that one of you is going to betray me. And after that communion, they went to the Garden of Gethsemane, and Jesus Christ was praying there, and his prayer was prayer with blood, and the pain, the agonizing experience that Jesus went through in that night that he was praying. And so here in these verses, Christ was saying, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. But his disciples did not understand. They misunderstood him. How can you build a kingdom that will last forever if you die? You know, how can you build it? So they did not understand him. Love is capable of making sacrifices. We already know the story. In this presentation that I am making with you, we already know the story. We already know the end. I would like to share with you this very heartbreaking story of the author writing about Ernest Shackleton. You probably know this. I got this on Wikipedia. Who is Ernest Shackleton and his expedition team to the South Pole. Ernest Shackleton and his boat expedition team wanted to reach the South Pole. Upon the approval of the New Zealand government, shared the cost of expedition. They sailed from England to the South Pole, at least with much funding already, so they are ready to move on to their project of discovering new frontiers. One of his friends wrote in his diary saying that it was the great southern journey. Indeed, it was great. They began to sail on October 29, 1908. When his team started out en route South Pole, they discovered a glacier which they named Beardmore Glacier. named after Shackleton's patron, one of his supporters. He and his team were the first persons to see and travel the South Polar Plateau. Their return journey was a race against starvation. They ran short of their supply, on half rations for much of the way, and finally they came to the end when their food supply ran out, and they distributed at night that each one of their last supply of food. Others, as they received their supply, they received their portion, wanted to eat right away, while others kept it on their backpack. As night falls, one of them, one after the other, climbed to his own bed. And while he was making himself ready to close his eyes, this Ernie Shackleton, he sensed there was a movement. One of his comrades walked up and took the cracker of his other companion. Of course, Ernie saw it in his own eyes, and so without much movement, he got up from his bed and took off his own cracker and put it on the backpack where the cracker was taken out of his other companion. So that night was a very interesting night. It seems that nothing had happened, without any obvious movement. That is what Shackleton actually did. But one of them observed, without notice, his name is Frank Wild, wrote on his diary when he secretly saw Shackleton's act of sacrifice. All the money that was ever minted, he wrote, would not have bought that biscuit, and the remembrance of that sacrifice will never leave me. Find it in Wikipedia. That's how Frank Wild wrote about that experience, looking at how Ernie Shackleton made that sacrifice. And he wrote that experience in these words: all the money that was ever minted would not have bought that biscuit, because that was the very source of the survival in that expedition to the South Pole. That was indeed a heroic act of sacrifice. But to think Christ did a heroic sacrifice of giving his life for us, which is why Christ was able to say, greater love hath no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. Another very striking evidence of a Christian is what Jesus said in verses 14 to 15. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends, for all things I have heard from my Father I have made known to you. This text made it clearly that Jesus wanted his followers to know that from that time on, he called them friends. A friend in time of joy and in time of sadness. A friend through all the good days and the bad. A friend through thick and thin. And Jesus, just qualifies all these criteria that he has demonstrated to his disciples. He qualified this criteria, and because of them, he became the best of friend that we have ever had. Jesus indeed is calling us friends as his followers, and he has the best friend that we've ever had. Did we have a friend who is closer to a brother? Or did we have a friend who can be with us through thick and thin? Or did we have a friend who can be with us in times of joy and sadness? Do we have a friend who can be with us in the days are good and when the days are bad? Jesus does not fail us because He is the best friend we have ever had. It is a true statement that you and I make many acquaintances as we pass through this life, but only very few true and genuine friends. Only very few true and genuine friends. Friends who can be there in time of our need. Friends who can be there through thick and thin, through the bad days and the good. I am thankful that I can tell you about one who wants to be your friend and my friend today. In this passage, Jesus reveals something about the nature of His friendship with His people. When you have Him for your friend, you have discovered a friendship that knows no limits. He is, by definition, our ultimate friend. I have three things here to share with you in reference to this true friendship that Jesus is establishing with us when He calls us. You are no longer servants, but I call you friends. His investment in our relationship. Remember verse 13, I was reading, greater love hath no one than this, all right? To lay down his life for his friends. So this is the basis upon which I would like to share with you this investment in our relationship. Our relationship is only possible because He died for us. This is what verse 13 is suggesting. He died for those He referred us with friends. But who are we really? Romans chapter 5 verse 8, but God demonstrated His love toward us in that while we were yet enemies, Christ died for us. Number two, His intimacy in our relationship. Verse 15, as I would like to read again, no longer will I call you friends. But in this reading, what is appropriate is that the friends translation on that original Greek language is actually rendered slaves. Literal translation, slaves. So will I read here in this new translation, no longer will I call you slaves, for slaves do not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. So this kind of friendship is intimate like no other friends can. Because there is so wide gap, a gap between a slave and a free man, a slave and the master. So you have here in this intimate relationship. I would like to tell you why. Jesus refers to His friendship with us as friends. And this term is used to refer to the king's inner circle. So therefore, now we had been slaves and He would like to call us as His friends. He is inviting us to His inner circle. His inner circle being king, because He is indeed king of the kingdom. And when you are invited to the king's inner circle, He can confide to you the most sensitive secrets that are involved in His kingdom. And which is why He is able to give it to us, because He said, because of my love for you and our love with the Father. So I have given you what my Father has given me, because I love you. So as we think about this relationship, and as we think about this language Jesus is using here, this must have been a rebuke to the disciples who even that night were spending their time seeking the first place. They were quarreling. They did not understand about what Jesus is saying for them. And so they did not understand. It was a rebuke. His love for His people moves Him to lead us into green pastures and beside the still waters of His Father's will for our lives. Because He loves us, He will not keep us in the dark concerning the Lord's will for our lives. And that is as far as His intimacy of our relationship with Him. And the last one here is that He calls us friends because He is involved with us in our discipleship. His involvement in our discipleship. we read verses 12, verses 14, verses 16 to 17. He calls us friends because he is involved with us as his disciples. And let me tell you about this. He does this by becoming intimately involved in our lives. What did he do? Verse 16 says, "You did not choose me, I chose you." So he chose us. That is how involved he is. We did not choose him. In that culture, disciples picked their own rabbi. Because there are so many rabbis from the Levite descent. And they would visit to the villages, to the places. And so, as they go, and the people would like to select who their rabbi is going to be. But here, this rabbi is the one choosing us. He chose us. And then not only that, he ordained us in the same verse 16. We have been appointed to the task. And what is this kind of task? That of doing without questioning the perfect will of God. We are told to go and bring forth fruit. Earlier in the verses, we have to abide in Jesus, because as we abide in him, we will be sustained by the nutrients that is coming from the main branch, from Jesus himself. And so as we pray for the Holy Spirit to abide in us, he will baptize us anew every day so that Jesus Christ will abide in us. And so as Jesus Christ will abide in us, we will bear fruits of righteousness. And so we have the fruit of the Spirit as expressed by Apostle Paul. So he promises in that our fruit will remain. So neither Satan, the world, or time can erode the impact of the ministry we perform for him here. Why? Because the fruit has within itself the seeds for more fruit. As we continue to bear fruit for God, fruit of righteousness, the influence of the deeds that we have done for others will continue to be the same seed for the truth that we have. Another one, he is involved in our discipleship. He also promises to answer our prayers so that we might get the job done for him. And this kind of prayers that work for those prayed in accord with God's will and in God's kingdom. It's a work for the kingdom. So as we come to the place of unquestioning obedience, we enter into the realm of friendship with Jesus. Our relationship with God becomes a reality that the moment when saving faith is exercised, we continue to do the will of God. In closing, I would like to mention here the verse that is actually very specific, that fulfills the hallmark of our being a Christian follower of Jesus. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one another. So brothers and sisters, what is the hallmark of a Christian? Today I'm sharing with you, as Jesus mentioned, love one another. I think our churches and our members of the church are missing the boat in this generation. Churches are restructuring every day. They do so that they be more seeker-friendly. That's what we want in our churches. Seeker-friendly. I'm not so sure that the people are looking for friendly churches as much as they are looking for friends. They come to our church because they can see who their real friends are, the friends of Jesus. They are interested on their behalf. They are interested in an intimate relationship of a godly relationship, love divine. So today I would like to share with you, the world is waiting for those who know Jesus as the best friend we've ever had, and to pattern their lives after him, and to do life like he did. So let me close this, sharing with you with a couple of questions. Are we the friend of Jesus? Are we a friend like Jesus? And are we willing to become his friend? And a friend like him. May the Lord bless us in the sharing, in the hearing of this word. May the Lord give us time again that we can see in person. God bless you all.